another school year comes homework, new friends, peer pressure, and sometimes high anxiety for our kids. Today, we have Dr. Brett with us from Pine Rest Christian Services, and let's talk about anxiety. I mean, we're all a little stressed out right now. It's hard to get back into the groove. It's hard to keep the kids on task. It's hard to get back into homework and early bedtimes. What are you seeing with families?
And hopefully school's not that scary of a place, but sometimes it can feel that way. Yes, it's hard for families to make this adjustment. Everything from little kindergartners all the way up to high schoolers. It's a difficult adjustment to make.
Well, we went out and just sort of gathered some common questions about anxiety. And I want to start with the first one of what's normal? I mean, is there a normal level of stress that kids should be walking around with? Or if our kids are coming home from school crying, do we need to get on the phone and get them into somebody?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, there is normal stress, and we have to have some stress in our life. What we need to do is learn how to hold that stress and live with it. Anxiety goes beyond that. So anxiety is when that stress really starts to interfere with our daily activities, with what we would like to be doing or what we're supposed to be doing. Think of anxiety as like a fire alarm. That alarm needs to be there to tell you something is wrong. But if you have a fire alarm that's going off all the time, even when there isn't a fire, then you have some anxiety.
Okay, but that sounds like a teenager.
Maybe, depending. But again, it has to be sort of age appropriate. So we know teenagers have a lot of things they're dealing with.
A lot of fire alarms.
A lot of fire alarms as they're pulling away from family and becoming their own person. But there is anxiety that's above and beyond what's normal. And again,
let's talk about that. So the question, is what is too much or over anxious or whatever? How do I tell if my kid's beyond the normal?
So we're going to look for being really distractible, not being able to sleep at night, being more irritable than what is typical, starting to not go to friends' houses, starting to not get on Facebook, so starting to avoid those activities that they used to enjoy, or starting to anticipate things weeks ahead of time and getting worked up about it. Those kinds of things are indicators that there's too much anxiety.
Okay, a third question would be, what about that friend anxiety? Because friends change. The person you thought was your best friend suddenly doesn't invite you to a party, or you're left out. Our kids can feel a lot of that.
Right. So one of the things that happens with this alarm system in us, right, is when something changes in our environment, we need to figure that out. Friends also, especially with teenagers, they're starting to tell us who we are as people. Teenagers need to be able to balance what they're hearing from their friends versus their own thoughts, their own beliefs about who they are. If they just listen to their friends too much, they're giving their friends too much power. So they have to balance that with their own voice, but they have to believe their own voice. And not believing your own voice can increase that anxiety.
All right, but let's talk a little bit about the family anxiety, because talk about not being able to hear your own voice. Sometimes there's so much noise in our families that kids just sort of don't know where they fit.
Right. So we have to learn how to respond or react to life based on how our parents are responding or reacting.
So if mom's flipping out, there's a good chance the kids might flip out.
The kids will learn how to do that. And I always try to talk with kids, especially adolescents, about the difference between responding and reacting. Responding means that you choose a behavior that gets you closer to your goal. Reacting means that you're just reacting to whatever is coming up without getting closer to your goal. And there's a difference there.
How can parents help? If we see increased levels of anxiety in our kids, what are we supposed to do?
Well, the first thing is really learning yourself how to hold stress and hold anxiety without reacting. But the second thing is with your kids, it may be that you need to get some assistance. You may need to get some help. And the nice thing about our children is that children are very, very responsive to therapy. Therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, works very well with kids.
So don't let it escalate and go too far along.
Exactly.
All right. Doctor, thank you so much. I appreciate your help and your commitment to families in West Michigan. Thank you.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Great stuff. Sometimes it helps to just talk to our friends and find out how they put stress in place while parenting. My friend Tommy at Star 105.7 is a busy dad with some awesome advice.